Greetings, interactive literature fans. That's a new one. I enjoy the occasional choose-your-own adventure novel, but I don't really have an outlet to talk about them, so that's what this is. And to help me out in this episode, I brought a friend. Meet Little Wolf Hunt. Say hi, everyone. Is going to be acting out my character in these, since I don't really have much in the way of images for this. Today, we are going to talk about Vampire the Masquerade, Night Road. Night Road is an interactive novel by Marquis, a writer of many other such books, including Silverworld, another one that I've read and highly enjoyed. Cars fall apart. So do people. So do phones. You pull out your old iPhone and check the time in the cracked screen. 6:05 a.m. Unlike your poor Honda, or the tattered air freshener hanging from your mirror, which used to hide the smell of dried blood, you'll last forever. If you can find somewhere to hide before 6:41 a.m. You've been making these courier runs for 10 years, each year making less than that, hiding in trunks and storage units during the day. Racing down desert highways at night with messages and parcels on your passenger seat. It's been boring. It's felt like getting old, trapped in this body that can never age. Well, you're not bored now. Before we begin, I will admit that before I read this book, I did not have any experience with Vampire the Masquerade or the World of Darkness as a whole. So if I get some of the big names wrong, that might be why. And if there are any veterans of the tabletop RPG or the video games that notice any inconsistencies that I don't, that will be why. And while this story does a good job of defining terms as they come up in the story, it is not 100% clear on everything. Thankfully, the author put in the extra mile and added a glossary of all the terms in the game concerning mechanics and lore. And I really appreciate that, Mr. Marquis. Well done. And after all that, 10 years on these miserable desert highways, scraping by on the charity of your elders as you run their errands. You've lost your edge, the clarity of your focus, sacrificing specialization in order to learn trick after trick, in order to survive from night to night. So I have my work cut out for me here, as I have to critique this story as both a book and as a game. Thankfully, it does pretty well in both cases. So, general plot. You are a vampire in the world of Vampire the Masquerade. It's a world in the modern day where vampires have power, but not so much that they can afford to be public about it. Their entire deal is to maintain the fiction that vampires don't exist. Breach the masquerade, and you will get the attention of hunters, both amateur and professional, and other vampires who want to keep you quiet. Vampires are more than willing to murder their own, if that keeps them safe. So who are you in this game? You are an 11th generation vampire. Not among the weakest of your kind, but pretty close to the bottom of the totem pole. You make a living as a courier for various kindred princes, since electronic messages are easy to intercept. You take messages and packages to and fro. I will say, regardless of how your character is statted out, it is very clear that they are a survivor. You will note throughout the story that they have learned tons of trickety tricks to keep themselves going. But first, you have to do some research. Your shitty flip phone isn't great for rapid searches, especially since you've disabled most of its tracking features, but you identify a few residential neighborhoods nearby, using the maps and guides you carry. You've been in Tucson before, and you've planned for ways to sustain yourself all over the Southwest, so you quickly identify a few quiet streets within walking distance. The beginning of the game takes your protagonist to Tucson, Arizona, where you will be spending the next few months. On the way, you get to suss out your backstory, who you were when you were human, what skills you are good at, what vampire clan brought you in, what blood powers did you develop, and of course, what is your name and gender. When you get to Tucson, after killing a Nosferatu vampire and deciding whether or not to kill a small group of innocent bystanders, you present your cargo to the Gango Prince of Tucson, Arizona, Lido Kaminsky. The man in the turquoise jewelry watches your approach with a slight smile. Your Lobo hesitates for only a moment, her eyes on the eagle. The young-looking man is seated comfortably in a wicker chair next to a small zinc table with an old laptop, a white hat, and a heap of typed and handwritten correspondence. The Nosferatu standing beside him only scowls. "Welcome to Tucson," he says. His accent is foreign, from somewhere in Europe, despite the Native American jewelry and the wide-brimmed hat in front of him. "I am Prince Leto. This is Dove. And you are Rook," he says. "The courier. It looks like you've had a difficult journey." Leto will be your main representative of the Camarilla, the government of the vampires. He hires your character to stay in Tucson for a while because he is short on couriers and needs to send a bunch of messages out. So it sets you up with a hideout, a new car, and lets you hunt in town for one night. Here is where you reach one of the big factors in the game, hunger versus willpower, and how much that affects humanity. Your vampire's hunger increases with time, and also increases when you use blood powers, called disciplines. You can exert willpower in order to ignore the beast if it is hungry or scared or angry, but if hunger exceeds your will, you will not be able to control yourself when you feed, killing the person you are feeding on. The silence is total, and you can't wait any longer. You smell the sleeping man, making sure he's not sick in a way that might harm you. He smells impossibly sweet. Your lips peel back around your fangs, and you bury your mouth in the folds of his neck. You can't stop. It's been too long, and your beast is too strong. The man just keeps on sleeping, his heartbeat slowing and slowing as you drink. Any other night you'd be disposing of a corpse, but just before you lose yourself in the ecstasy of the kiss, you feel someone watching you, and that gives you the focus to wrench your mouth away from the old man's neck. A shadow in the window? No. You shake your head as the fog of pleasure and satiation recedes. No one is outside. Did you imagine it? You shake your head again, fighting for lucidity. Maybe your hunger-addled mind was playing tricks. If you kill your target, you lose a point of humanity, putting yourself even closer to bestial insanity. Not to mention you will have to hide the body to avoid a masquerade breach. When your character has drunk their fill, they meet up with an old friend, Julian Sim. There's that incomprehensible gleam in Julian's eyes again. Some nights it seems like Julian couldn't be a worse representative of his religion, or of the larger cultural complex that surrounds and sustains Clan Banu Hakim. And some nights, your old friend looks like the angel of death. Julian was your friend in the early days as a vampire, but he is also a very ambitious anarch, a vampire who doesn't go along with the Camarillo's rules. Julian asks you to help him out with his plans, and they involve messing with the jobs Leto gives you. You can support Leto, support Julian, play both sides, or give them both the finger. Your call. And after completing a few tasks for Leto and Julian, you will meet our third big player, Agent Samantha Donati of the Second Inquisition. Behind you in line is a woman the size of two big men. You can tell because she's got two big men behind her. All three wear two tight black suits. "Good evening, Rook," the woman says. You've seen her before, and this time you memorize her features. White, middle-aged, graying brown hair in a French braid. Really huge. "My name is Agent Donati, with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I'd like to ask you a few questions." The Second Inquisition seems to be the vampire hunters of this world, a group that has membership in all sorts of powerful groups, including the FBI. You will naturally have to fight against them, or you can join them. You are allowed to reject your vampiric nature and hunt your own kind. Not overtly, of course, since you still need to keep yourself alive, but you are capable of turning on them. And now some fine points of the story that I think are worth mentioning. This is a world where vampires are secret, but have integrated themselves into society, meaning they need to have found ways to get access to blood while staying anonymous. After all, active hunting only works for so long before people start noticing sudden disappearances, deaths, or break-ins at the blood banks. The vampires have built a whole system to serve their needs of sustenance while maintaining their safety. Here's where this gets a little dark. There are tons of small moments sprinkled throughout the story where vampires display their callousness towards humans and each other. However, there are a few moments where you see the scope of the effects they have on the world. Two examples of which stand out to me. Both pretty early in the game, so don't worry about too heavy spoilers. The first is when Leto asks you to bring a message to a Bruja named Patermuster. Patermuster leads a group of kindred lowlives and has taken up residence in an active hospital. I repeat, a bunch of vampires loose in an active hospital without any oversight. You may now shudder with horror. And the vampires aren't being subtle either. There are dead bodies on stretchers with bite marks. There are vampires that are clearly insane, and there's even a nasty beastie that takes a particular enjoyment of haunting the pediatrics wing. And as far as I can tell, the hospital staff are either unaware of the vamps, or they can't do anything about it. That's a lot of yikes right there. You spend the next few nights getting a feel for the hospital, its deranged layout, and its ugly, secret little corners where the sick huddle and the vampires feed. Followed by Magda in her service dog vest, you listen in on doctors and insurance executives as they conspire and embezzle. Nurses as they sell opiates to patients and people waiting outside. Doped up patients who keep asking what happened to their cell phones and if their families know they're there. You check out urgent care, where accident victims are forced to sign whatever is put in front of them before they're brought inside. The furnace, where surgeons dispose of evidence of their botched operations, and the lobby, where, it seems, the same people are always sitting, waiting for help that won't come. The other big example is when Leto tells you to take a message to the Ventru Olive Krona. She is in charge of a major source in the blood trade of the Southwest. Guess how she got all that blood? By commandeering a prison camp for illegal immigrants. Yep, the vampires are more than happy to take advantage of the suffering of a large group of people in order to make their own lives more convenient for themselves. Yeah, the vampires in this world are a bunch of jerks. Throughout history, certain kinds of prisons have served as natural meeting spaces and feeding grounds for the kindred. Insane asylums, concentration camps, and gulags have drawn vampires with the promise of easy blood and relative security. Olive Krona, shadow director of Camp Scheffler, and member of Clan Ventru, has hidden this place from regular inspection, and allowed it to fester and grow ripe. What's more, the vampires treat these things casually. Humans mean very little to them. You can roleplay a protagonist who wants to protect people. You can screw over the vampires in the hospital to save the civilians, and you can release the prisoners from the immigration camp. But whenever you show concern for human life, the other vampires will mock you and call you naive for helping them. They're only trying to make life easier for themselves. Who are you to get in their way? And this darkness is part of the draw of the world. It's a messed up place where monsters are struggling with their humanity. Many try their best to live ethically, but many others are more than willing to cross some lines in pursuit of power or self-preservation. But it isn't all doom and gloom. The various characters might be jerks in one way or another, but that doesn't mean they aren't compelling. They are interesting enough that they are still fun to hang out with. Many of them still have glimpses of humanity in them, despite having done bad things before. There's fury there that's the hallmark of Clan Bruja, underlaid with a fierce protectiveness. Paternoster isn't that old, but you feel like you can taste centuries of sorrow and rage and disappointment in his veins. Don't get emotional, kid, he says. It's time for you to learn how to really kick ass. And besides, it's not like this book is devoid of light moments. After a day of fitful dreams, you throw on your courier's outfit and boots and get ready for another night. You step outside and check your sab. A neighbor parks next door in her Ford Super Duty and gives you a friendly little wave. You've been practicing this. You're ready. Howdy, neighbor. Howdy, she responds before heading inside. You fucking nailed it. You're one of them. Then, a metallic-hued sports car rolls into the parking lot, drawing everyone's attention. Don't park here, damn it, you think. Then Julian Sim parks his Fisker Karma next to your Sab, steps out of the sports car, and looks around. The overall plot resembles a fun action drama. Your character is just trying to survive, make money, or whatever other goals you have, while working for Prince Leto for a few months during a particularly turbulent time for the kindred. The Second Inquisition has had a lot of success against the vampires in the Southwest, and Tucson is quickly becoming the last major vampire haven in the area. Meanwhile, Julian is making plans that are dangerous for the Masquerade, and Leto believes he knows something about a person he once knew who is now dead. So the plot is well set up for a good bit of action, deception, and good clean fun amongst the more heavy stuff. This story does a great job in making you feel like a badass vampire. As Nosferatu forces the man back into the storage room, you leap out of the shadows and grab the chain. The white is larger and stronger than you, but you have the advantage of leverage, and when the chain catches in the corner of the door, the creature jerks to a halt. It howls, then reverses course and rushes you, but you're ready. You drop to your knees and pull the chain again, tugging the ravenous thing off balance. It stumbles past you, then scoops up the dead woman and smashes through the boarded up front door. The last you see it, it's loping towards the highway with a corpse cradled in its arms like a child. And this leads me smoothly to gameplay. This is a choose-your-own-adventure book, so all your decisions are dictated by multiple choice options. Some of them are skill checks, some of them are dialogue choices, some of them are just actions you are doing. You select the option you want, then click the button to move to the next page. Very simple. There are a bunch of things that Night Road does that are different from how most games of this type operate. First, we look at the stats, as they are usually one of the first things I look at when booting up a new one of these. Most games of this kind show your stats with these bars, signifying how good you are at something, how much a particular person likes you, or some other metric. Night Road chooses not to do this, and instead display these as little dots that fill in depending on how much of that value you have. This clearly displays what the maximum of that skill is, and how much that value is. When you are increasing skills with the bars, it can be difficult to know how much is going to go up. With this, you know exactly how much. Now your statistics are separated into a few categories. You have the traits, the bits keeping track of your stats that govern your likelihood to die. More on that later. Then you have attributes, skills, and disciplines. All these affect your skill checks. Most choose-your-own-adventure games only look at one stat for these checks, but this one takes an approach that is reminiscent of Vampire the Masquerade's tabletop origin. Every skill check looks at a combination of an attribute and a skill. A higher attribute provides a smaller boost, but is applicable over a wide variety of stats, while skills give big boosts but only for specific tasks. You aren't always going to be able to use a certain skill. Disciplines are your blood powers. They allow you a significant boost to your skill checks, but every time you use one, it uses up some of your blood, making your vamp more hungry. I think this is a clever way of doing things, offering a wide variety of approaches to problems. The powers in particular add an element of figuring out if you need the boost now, or if it would be better to wait until later. As if that wasn't enough, there are also other ways to affect your stats. Because you are a courier, your car is very important, and many of your skill checks will rely on it as well. Cars have their own stats, offering their own boosts to your checks. Additionally, there are lots of items you can purchase that can affect your stats as well. Swords, guns, and computers will offer their own boost to your skill checks, and sometimes give you options that weren't available before. After all, you can't exactly make use of your firearm stat if you don't have a gun. What's more, if you have the animalism power, you can have an animal companion to help you out. Or you can get yourself a ghoul helper. Now there are some shaky ethics about ghouls in this world, but it does fit the tone. Now increasing stats is different in this game from others as well. Most of these books increase your stats by using those stats. So if you want to get good at using a sword, then you have to continually use that sword to solve your problems through the game. This one opts to give you experience points through the game, and when you are given downtime, you can spend those points to increase your stats. I think I actually prefer this, because it gives me the freedom to approach things how I want, instead of having to worry about increasing a subpar stat when I don't know if it will succeed. Or sticking to a stat that will succeed, but it's already maxed out so I can't increase it further. In most of these games, if I fail a skill check, it will prevent the stat from increasing, amongst other things. In this, your success in skill checks is pretty divorced from power progression. Not completely, because you still get experience from skill checks, but they aren't directly tied to the skills you use. You hop online and find that your old contact, Simon, runs a gym called Paragon Fitness not far away. You head there and find an impressive-looking modern gym. Simon is watching two kickboxers practice their technique. You renew your acquaintance with the now middle-aged athlete and ask after unusual facilities. Gym, shooting range, regular and vehicle obstacle course, and we hold fights every Monday and Friday nights, Simon says. I still owe you for that thing in Tijuana, so you're welcome at any time. Just don't let anyone know, what you are. We have citizens in here. I think the power progression is also tied into the endings for these games. Most of these games will have difficult skill checks at the end, and failing checks along the way hurts your progress towards meeting those checks. For this game, failing checks can end your game prematurely. Most of these games are unwilling to kill your character until the end of the game, but this one has no problem with killing you halfway through it. Looking back at those essential stats, you will see the consequences of failure. If you're in a fight and you fail a check, you may take a wound, and if you take enough, you will die. Poof, game over. If you screw up in a way that make people suspect vampires, you get a Masquerade breach, and if you get enough, hunters will track you down during the day and murderize you. If you feed on a human but your hunger outweighs your willpower, then you risk killing your prey, which may drop your humanity, and if you lose enough, you will lose your sanity. You know how in Alien, the alien can only attack you if you're carrying a weapon? That's Predator, you say. No, it's Alien, Julian says. Anyway, I'm making an important point. That last job got a little rough. I may have turned invisible and stabbed a guy, like the alien in Alien. That's the Predator, you say. My point is, when people come at you with guns, okay? Sometimes you have to kill them, or destroy them, bunny fingers, if they are your fellow Canites. But we're not murderers, Rook. We have a beast inside us now, a monster that exists only to feed and kill, and if we let it loose, it'll burst out of us, like, I don't know, I can't think of a metaphor. How can you control it, you ask? If you gotta kill or die, Julian says, you kill. But no killing to feed. No killing because it's the easy way out. That strengthens the beast. A lot of Canites say we're predators, Rook, but we're not. We're parasites, and parasites don't kill their hosts. Oh shit, you're right, I was thinking about Predator. I even had the Predator versus Parasite metaphor lined up. I'm sorry. But look, if you need to kill to survive, fine. But anything else will destroy you in the end. Now you can heal from these ailments. You can spend blood to heal wounds, you can spend money to shore up the Masquerade, you can perform acts of self-sacrifice to protect people and get your humanity back. The life of a vampire is a life of danger, and through all this you're just trying to keep going. The elders of the kindred are lies wrapped in flesh. Undeath is no promise of immortality. You've seen 100 Canaanites born into the night, only to die a few months later at the hands of hunters or their own kind, or just because they didn't know what time it was. So overall, I highly recommend this book for fans of vampires, dark stories, or interactive fiction in general. It has more complicated mechanics than most other games of this genre, but it is a lot of fun. As with all Choice of Games titles, this game is available on Steam, the App Store, Google Play, and the Amazon Store. Take care, friends.